Okay, we are going to move on to item 4, presentation by Team 2 regarding their response to request proposal 1618 and to serve costs and by Living Neighborhood Development Corporation, also known as Pleasant Hills Cooperative. Please take it away.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to be here to present to you. It's my pleasure to present these representatives of the Pleasant Hill Collaborative. Pleasant Hill was the name of the neighborhood on top of the hill before there was Robertson Hill. That's why we named it that. My name is Harold McMillan. I'm a nonprofit art and culture professional here in town. And though I've been doing public art work back to the 1980s, when I founded the Clarksville Jazz Festival and a blues documentary project. For the past 25 years or so, all of my work has been focused on Central East Austin. In fact, my organization, Diverse Arts, is the oldest Black-run arts organization in the city, which also means that I'm old. And a lot of what's going on with this group is intergenerational, multi-generational legacy work for some of us. I'm also a credentialed cultural historian. My graduate research focused on the history of Black music in pre-integration, Black East Austin, Central East Austin. And my nonprofit has been the steward of urban renewal property on Block 18 for the past 20 years under the name Kenny Durham's Backyard. I also am a homeowner and member of the Robertson Hill, Anderson Hill neighborhood, and I live on Juniper Street, right across the street from Block 16. So this is all very close and dear to my heart. And in a lot of ways, I feel like what we're doing right now, the process has finally caught up with vision that's been around for a long time, known in this community. Those of us who make this stuff our work, we really know it. So those of you who are familiar with the history of urban renewal in Austin and Central East Austin should hearken back to the lovely 1999 New Vision for East Austin Urban Renewal Plan, a beautiful planning document that we see little evidence that some folks paid much attention to, which is why we are here now. But that New Vision for East Austin was a good plan for this district, was forward thinking. That plan and my professional work coincides in that it was after that plan was produced that I authored the original concept for the Cultural Heritage District, wrote that up and presented it to a local nonprofit as a potential project. That was also the time of the first iteration of what we're calling the Kenny Durham Center. I also offered that to another nonprofit who passed on that. So this is really exciting to me in that it's a long time coming, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing that we are there, and it really is about that vision thing. And the reason that we're here today is because that notion for the Cultural Heritage District and for a cultural core on East 11th Street didn't start with this RFP process. It started about 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago. And some of us have been doing the work and biding our time in the meanwhile, hoping to get to where we are right now. So the vision thing, it predates the resolution that was passed in September 21. That resolution is authorizing legislation for this process right now. I happen to have drafted that resolution. So this group is intimately engaged in work. And the work is community, culture, preservation, local, hyper-local involvement of key people. We don't live in Fluger Rock. Several of the members of this team have been living and doing cultural work, doing housing work, doing development work in 78702, adjacent to Juniper, adjacent to East 11th Street. I'm not a developer, but I got this group together. And in order for the people to sit at the table with us, they had to drink the Kool-Aid. And the biggest gulp of Kool-Aid was that we were producing something that was culture-based, historically respectful, and it's not going to be owned by a developer. It's going to be a community asset for the community that will provide a core for the Cultural Heritage District that was designated and finally adopted by the city in 2007 with no teeth, which is why that resolution got rewritten and put in front of council again in 21. So this is not new. This is a fleshing out of work that should have been done a long time ago. And I am proud and happy to say that our homework, what we were reaching for, pretty far supersedes and surpasses the tone and tenor of the RFP. I think we cover all of the bases, plus we're local, mission-driven, culture was at the top of the list from the very beginning. There's economic development around and within and because of cultural work. We're very cognizant of that. My team often tells me that I talk too much. So I have to look at my notes so that I can go ahead and stop.
Yeah.
I don't want to say one more thing. We went into this knowing that we were doing remedial work, and the stuff behind what we're doing is acknowledging that the work that we're doing is reestablishing a viable and visible African-American cultural presence in this district. That's the work that we're about. And I'm proud of these folks that have helped us get there. Now I'll pass it on to another neighborhood guy, Mr.
Thanks.
Sean Garrison.
We might talk too much, but it's always salient and important, so appreciate it. So my name is Sean Garrettson. I've been in East Austin about 25 years. Been the board president of Chestnut Neighborhood Revitalization Corporation that Reverend Joseph Parker started about 25 years ago. We built a lot of affordable housing in East Austin. And I met that gentleman at the end there, Harold McMillan, when I was in your shoes, when I was on the Urban Renewal Board. And it was at a time when Harold was coming to the Urban Renewal Board for ground lease to do Kenny Dorm's backyard. And we were grappling with terminating the tri-party agreement between the city of Austin, the ARA, and the Urban Renewal Authority. So we all in this room share one thing, and that is we are so ready for this to come to rise out of the ground. There's been so much community input that's been put into this process the last 2 decades. One of my board members, Edna Rambo, was the first Black to ever graduate from the University of Texas. She tells a story when she was younger. Her dad owned most of the vending machines on East 11th Street. And she would go in there and he would put her up on one of the vending machines while he collected all of his coins. And she said, the musicians I saw, everything, it was sort of like our Black Harlem, if you will. It was there, East 12th Street. We were all ready to see that come back. And as Harold said, I think we have a really good team to make that happen. Much to the chagrin of our architects, we did not invite him to come up tonight because we know what you guys want to talk about, and that's how it's going to get implemented. How is it going to get funded? And so what you're going to hear from Garrett is we have delved deep into the costs. We're going to talk about the costs and what those sources of funding are going to look like. And we are matching those sources of funding to the specific program. For example, Houston Tillotson, we've had several conversations with them about student housing. You cannot do student housing with LIHTC funding. It's just something to be aware of. Rachel is going to talk about, and we talk about demand. What does the market want in terms of unit size, et cetera. GNDC, which is 2 blocks away, has a list of 900 folks on a waiting list for residents. They know specifically what the unit sizes are. They know what that demand is. Harold has been curating, and Kim is going to talk about this. Harold has been curating a list of potential commercial tenants. And we're not waiting to potentially be selected. We have already collected LOIs for all those. We're going to show you those tenants tonight. And then lastly, I think AJ is going to talk about, who's not only, you might remember, he was part of the community engagement process for you all, but he's going to talk about how we're going to be utilizing community engagement through the design, the construction, and then as the other team talked about, the programming afterwards. That's really crucial and important. So with that, I'll turn it over to Garrett.
Okay, so Servitas is a fixed fee developer. What that means, big picture, as a minority and women-owned business, is that we provide development services, and we're not going to take an ownership interest in the project. So, and in fact, we've persuaded every developer on this team to work on a fixed fee basis. What that does is that opens up ownership at every single level of the project for people that live in the project to own the project. We know that's a goal of the community. That's a goal of the URB. And we're proposing that so that our development structure and our methods of finance do not get in the way of that goal. We, in your shoes, as your potential partner in this public-private partnership, we want to make sure that we're thinking, if we're in your shoes, what are we thinking ahead on? And how do we get ahead of you so that we're solving the problems that we know we might run into? And one of the very specific prompts that the AEDC challenged us with is maintaining a proactive partnership through financial and market challenges, because we know Austin has had those most recently with some of its P3s, especially post-pandemic. So we want to have a project that has sound underwriting on one side of its guardrail, but also on target for who it's trying to serve. So those are kind of the guardrails we want to stay inside of. That means units need to be on par with like product. So I love that I see Houston Tillotson here. Hi. So if we're going to have student housing in this project, and I love that 6 squares you said, preserving the past, embracing the future. If we have Houston Tillotson in this project, it's a great way to embrace the future. You got to have a developer that has that experience, so you can deliver that type and debt markets are going to expect that. Having a developer that has delivered affordable housing in this market before, it's a great way to make the debt markets comfortable that you can deliver in this market. Missing middle housing. We have a philosophical difference here. We think that it's important that you have a diverse set of methods of finance so that you have a diverse community. So not just relying on one single method of finance. If everything's a hammer, then everything's a nail. You really do want more than one method of finance here. Otherwise, like Sean just mentioned, you're going to be specifically prohibiting and precluding certain people in the community. Gap financing tools. We've heard a lot from the AEDC. You need to go out and be focusing and researching what kind of tools are available. The right way to approach this, we think, is that design the project for who it needs to serve first, then go find the right tool. Don't say, well, this is the type of financing method we need, and this is how we maximize the financing available, and now we're going to go design the project to maximize the financing. And we think that's the opposite approach. So, and it's really because of Harold's vision and his insistence that we stay disciplined to it, that we are focused on first making sure the project is meeting the community need, and then finding the financing tool that matches that need and best fills that gap. There is a natural tension, another concern we have. There's a natural tension between the code minimum in parking and what's financially viable. The gentleman from Legacy, he rightly points out that it's a balancing act. He's right about that. We need to find the right balancing act on code minimum and what's financially viable in parking. Last but not least, on the ground lease. We want a ground lease term that's as long as it needs to be to pay off the debt and not one day longer. We don't need 65 years. We don't need 99 years. We need at least one day longer than the debt term, and then we're ready to hand ownership of all of the project back to the community, including back to the tenant. We can condo it out, and that is not a potential, that is an actual. We can actually hand ownership over to that tenant. And now I'm going to hand it over to Rachel to share a little bit more about GNTC's approach to affordable housing.
So I'm Rachel Stone. I'm the Assistant Executive Director of Guadalupe Neighborhood Development Corporation. We are a community-based affordable housing developer that started in 1981 in Central East Austin, and we've been nationally recognized for helping mitigate displacement of Black and brown families in East Austin through our affordable housing. We provide rental and homeownership opportunities, and we prioritize people with generational ties to the communities we serve, specifically 78702, 21, and 22. So we would be developing and managing Block 16, which would be 98 units of 100% affordable housing, targeting families with generational ties, which from our waiting list of over about 900 people that we've developed over the last 40 years, those are people that are trying to remain or return to East Austin. They are about at the 50% median family income and mostly looking for 1 to 3 bedroom units, and they are move-in ready. We also have our community land trust, which provides pipelined homeownership. So we always prioritize our tenants in order to move them into our homeownership product, which we have 110 units in development. So we have a way to move people from rental to ownership. We would be financing this through LIHTC, and we have experience. We've closed on 2 LIHTC projects, and we have 1 in financing in the process. And we've added a LIHTC consultant to our team to ensure the feasibility. And we've successfully utilized HUD, state, local, federal home loan bank, and TSHAC money, as well as private and corporate philanthropy in order to finance these projects. The first floor of the project will be our small commercial grocer, and that'll be managed by our partner Topo. So I'll turn it over to Kim to talk more about that.
Thank you. Yeah, excited. Private developer doing affordable creative space here in Austin for artists and nonprofits for over a decade. We're really excited to look at a public-private partnership to really accelerate the idea of affordable creative space. And we were very pleased to hear that in the phase 2 that the city is looking to own that cultural space still. And so we have learned a lot over the last decade about how to appropriately manage affordable creative space. We've been lucky enough to have patient capital to invest in our private development. But what we have learned is that we're the framework for a community where someone else, a nonprofit, the community itself, the project itself, the cultural district, has a representative or representatives that really assist in that program from the beginning through operations. We're lucky enough that Harold has spent a lot of his life thinking about this project, and now we are at a point where we can really execute on that. And so to provide a framework to help not only in the lease-up process, but also through onboarding and tenant improvement phase, for him to recruit and help solicit some great business owners for this district is just is a pleasure. You'll see, if you could, it's kind of small, so I'll read a couple of the names. These are a little bit bigger here. You know, some of the LOIs that Harold has procured over the last 2 years. You see the Texas Music Museum, you see Hoover's, you see Deborah Roberts, you see the East Austin Black History Project, just to name a few. And so we know that as a part of this, that we already have a head start in looking at some of the outcomes that we hear that are goals of this project in the cultural district. We also know that through this process, we expect a lot of demand to be in this Block 18, which we just discussed. And so part of that is understanding, you know, as Garrett mentioned, there's a balance between how much parking we really need on this site, or obviously the residential component, but also the commercial, when we have some outdoor event space and food and beverage and some other retail tenants. And so, you know, there are many different ways to look at this, and we've onboarded Peak Parking as a good analyst to really refine kind of how we think about some opportunities to very importantly want to preserve cost and not over park and pay for structured parking that we don't need. But we know that the neighborhood doesn't want overflow in that community, and so really thinking through that. And then finally, we need our operators to be successful. And we know, having hospitality background within our development group, that you want both, many modes of mobility to get to your places of
Run that time.
yes, thank you. And so with that, getting some input from the community is certainly important. So we have AJ Bingham here, the Bingham Group, to talk a little bit about community input.
Evening, all. AJ Bingham, Bingham Group LLC. Just quick background on myself. I've been in Austin, or grew up in Austin, been here 33 for 40 years. In South Austin, but I've in that time worked to develop and have a relationship with the East Side. Very excited to be part of this project, and our goal is to not reinvent the wheel, to take and incorporate, or to incorporate the 25 years of engagement and prior work that's been done in this as we go forward. We see that engagement happening over 5 phases: initiation, site activation, pre-construction, construction, and post-construction. Throughout all, the goal is to have proactive community engagement. I think as we go through, we have a firmer timeline. Of course, we will have more practical activity about the kind of work we'll do with the community. But we also want to make sure we're engaging we will engage the businesses, groups, organizations that are along the East 11th Street corridor, as well as the broader community, and especially our partners in the community, or organizational stakeholders, Six Square, Houston Tilts University, Austin Justice Coalition, Austin Revitalization Authority, the Greater Austin Black Chamber of Commerce, and Austin Urban League, amongst others. And we look forward to working with y'all. Turn over to Harold, folks.
And to wrap this up, since I think we're right on it,
Carolyn, I think we're at time.
I'm just saying good night and thank you.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Into this process, we bear with the same question. And help. Try to do it roughly in order. First couple of questions were about the unit mixes, the affordability of them, and there was also a question about kind of thought process comes up in the market mix.
Yeah, that's a great question. And we kind of look at that on a couple of different blocks. I think Rachel is probably the best person to start fielding that question.
Yeah, so block 16 is going to be, 98 units of 100% affordable housing. We're targeting 50% median family income. And we based our unit mix off of our wait list, as I mentioned. So it is, our wait list, we have about, I know we had the discussion in the last round about 1-bedrooms, but people do want, we're only going to have 31 1-bedrooms, but our wait list, the majority, there's a 415 looking for 1-bedrooms, 315 looking for 2-bedrooms, 265 looking for 3-bedrooms, and 120 looking for 4-bedrooms of that. And those are the people we've targeted over the last 40 years who have been seeking housing in the neighborhood. So we've got a mix of majority 2-bedroom units on that building with some 1 and 3s, and that is what we've seen in the market. So the 4-bedrooms are mostly on block 18. So that's how we came up with our mix, was basing it off that.
Garrett, do you want to mention block 18?
Yeah.
I think we also have an on-site residence space there.
Yeah. So on block 18, we're envisioning, we're in preliminary talks with Houston Tilton. They're positive so far. And we've got 87 beds of student housing there. And we've developed 20,000 student housing beds across the U.S. Those are mostly apartment style, all single private units with shared common space, living room, bathrooms, and some live-work townhomes. So live-work townhomes are at about 100% of MFI, and the student housing match their current master lease units at St. Edwards, just about. They're a little higher because it's new construction. I think what the important call out here, because the question is really about affordability, is that our method of finance proposes that they're all affordable in perpetuity, because we're not, there's no affordability period. So we're not opposed. We're not looking to say, okay, after the affordability period, we're going to flip it to market rate, or you need to pay us to keep it affordable in the future. It's nothing like that. We're prepared to make this affordable now and affordable forever.
Follow-up questions. The point that you were sharing, oftentimes what is concerning communities is that with revitalization and ultimately results in expediting process of gentrification. And so you talked about earlier, I want you to wrap it just a little bit more briefly, if you would, please, about having community ties. I think that was the term that you used.
Uh-huh.
How does that program work in order to try to do exactly the spirit of that, which is to allow community who has exited, maybe for whatever the reason may be, financial and or other, who would like to have that opportunity to the community? How does that work?
So our nonprofit was based off of that exact issue that people were being forced out of East Austin back in the 80s. It was more from commercial encroachment versus, straight up gentrification. But so from 81 on, our waiting list has been, we ask the question, do you have generational ties to East Austin? And we ask them to, list where they're from, and we consider generational ties. We prioritize the wait list based on 25 years, 15 years, 10 years, and then do you currently live in Central East Austin? So we know on our waiting list who has those ties, who, almost all of our staff is living in East Austin or from East Austin. So we're able to sort of, have that data and just have a sense of where people have come from, whose grandparents lived in town, and we're just able to rank them. So if a unit is available, we're going to first turn to those older generational ties and then go through until we find the family that's at the income level with the ties and, that fits the unit. That's how we do that.
And then for you, just a question, you talked about, being very anxious at some point in time to return project back to the community. So when you're looking at home ownership, or looking at small business ownership, what would that look like and over what period of time? Because at least won't be paid off in 10 years, that's for sure.
That's right. It won't be.
A long period of time. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to envision the complexities of how long do I have to be there before I become then eligible to be able to sit at that seat?
I'd ask for a little grace in answering this. It's still a competitive process. And thankfully, my competitors are in the room right now. And
But don't tease me.
in the phase one proposal, we submitted a 150-page packet. And I don't know if you got a chance to read all of it. But in the phase two, there's going to be a very detailed way to do this. It won't be a forever thing. Okay. You're right to call out that, hey, yeah, when the lease is paid off, but how long is the lease? That is the question. I'm going to answer that in the phase one or the phase two proposal.
Hold you to it.
Please.
All right, the next set of questions dealt with, and I've already answered some of this, but want to give you the same opportunity to expand upon it. How you ensure that the businesses located on the block reflect the district, community, and how you have supported small minority-owned businesses past project and ensured inclusion and affordability in this project.
Can I take the first part of that?
Please.
The genesis of this idea, this whole notion of reestablishing, nobody that lives in our neighborhood, my neighborhood, wants a development that then is occupied and peopled by folks that don't get it. They don't know where they are. They're not appreciative of the history of where they are. And putting this project together as really focused on culture, and that's a big container. But we specifically went out to Black-owned businesses, Black-run nonprofits, people that do Black art and culture work, and tried to hip them to what we were doing and get them to sign up before any of this ever got together. And by the time we moved into the process, there are more folks that are interested than that. But I can with confidence say that all of those folks have said, yes, we want to be a part of this because you've got an idea about creating cultural synergy in a localized area so that all of these various segments of the community feeds each other in terms of needs and reciprocity. If we can have that space be student housing for HT, that reconnects a historic tie to HT and East 11th Street that has been broken. that used to be there. And that brings Black folks back to live on East 11th Street. So the curating of the potential tenants, we were thinking about that from the beginning. And I can't speak so much about the technical stuff, but
Other question was sort of the affordability. I mean, we, private developer, have struggled to make sure we can keep affordable rents, because our structure is private debt and equity, with some help from new markets, so we have some experience there. The structure that Servitas is putting forth helps to bridge that. And so it puts some opportunities in that the private sector doesn't necessarily have. And so I think we've baked into our pro formas reduced rent over a period of time. He will walk you through the ownership component of that. So I think that's our structure to keep rents affordable, and provide a path.
Yeah, the big key ingredient here is you want to remove private capital to remove private gain. No one is, the mission here is to not enrich a private developer. Like my child does not need to become wealthy from this project. That is not why we're here. We are here to build a project to help the community, right? We're here to bring a vision to life. We're here to answer the prompt, right? So by removing the need to get a return on equity capital and just repaying a debt instead, now we have a chance to just pay the debt rather than enrich a private entity. So it's a completely different structure than is typical. It's very common in the P3 space. It's common in education and slowly beginning into workforce space, but it's not common in the affordable housing space, but we're very excited to bring it to this project.
If I may add one thing, sorry, sir, just wanted to piggyback on, basically just give Topo some props. I had known about some of their buildings before, but I highly recommend you go look at Canopy and Springfield General. Excuse me, I'm so sorry, I have a cough all of a sudden. I don't think there's any other developer in Austin that really embraces social capitalism like Topo does. You heard her say lowering rents. The rents for most of their commercial tenants are actually below market. And I think that's what we're trying to get and what we're trying to achieve on this building. So you have a developer who's actually done that on the commercial side of things. Sorry.
So I guess my question leans towards the commercial aspect of the building and development, similar to what you mentioned for a while. So Vice Chair Pierce was speaking to this before. Essentially, how do you bake into the process or ensure throughout the process that the commercial viability, meaning a tenant, can then segue onto something that is beyond where they currently are? So I didn't get a chance to ask the previous group, but long story short, when we have these affordable housing complexes or entities such as this, you can create another segue, or you got a Section 8, you have affordable housing here, but we're trying to beckon individuals to continue to grow and thus make the neighborhood and the cultural aspect of the community continuously viable. So I'm assuming it's going to be a similar answer, but in the commercial space, you guys are looking to work at it. So we just continue to segue people into ownership beyond the lease aspect.
Yeah, I mean, I think to Sean's point, sort of below market rents is where you start. I think the idea that this will be off the tax rolls, property taxes, a big part of commercial rent structure. That's huge. And so both of those together are one. Two is probably more important, is making them successful, making these business operators, these nonprofits successful in the project. And so starting all the way from obviously community input and what the community wants there, needs there, all the way through to, what does parking look like for that operator? What does a nonprofit space? It starts in the design phase, not we're going to just all build it and then decide how we're going to fill the space. Right? And so starting very early on, just with small business experience, a lot of us actually, to understand what will make those business owners successful. And then going back to structure, if there's an affordability component to the rent structure, and then there's an opportunity path to ownership. I think the financing structure, capital structure that this opportunity provides is how we'll work toward that.
I love that question because that's philosophically aligned with exactly how we are structuring this team and the approach to this development. We've had this talk. When the first tenant that comes in, maybe step one is charitable, but step 2 through 1,000 is we need them to a path to thrive. It's not just charity, it's thrive, it's success, it's excellence. That's where we're trying to get.
I want to make sure I'm clear on these 2 points as maybe still some of your special sauce that you already proposed. Harold, you had mentioned about student housing.
Mhm.
You started off part of your conversation talking about the complexity of funding. So I thought I understood, so I want to seek to understand with student housing. So square that up for me. Where are you all looking at still trying to fit that in a model that's presenting some type of financial challenges with inside the model and knowing what the needs are as you frame it earlier?
So I just wanted to call out that we are trying to do a mixed income, mixed use project that has components of different incomes, backgrounds, perspectives, that has affordable housing, that has student housing, that has a commercial component, culture, arts, music, all these different venues. But a lot of those methods of finance, you talked earlier about, you got to make the complex simple. Okay. Money, if you control the money, you make the rules. So LIHTC controls the money, they make the rules, right? So LIHTC says you can't have student housing. LIHTC says if you want artists in the first position in the residency waterfall, you can't do that. That's illegal. There are different methods of finance that we can bring to the table that we're going to propose in phase 2. All due respect, I'd like to not talk about them right now. That we can prioritize things in a different, more creative way to better answer the questions that you're asking, because they should be answered. Like Harold's saying, this is remedial work. So take the time and answer the question.
And that's partially why we have the affordable housing on block 16 and then the student housing and other housing on block 18 is
Right.
that separation.
That separation helps.
Oh, but I see that compiled list of individuals that you surveyed to see what people, how often is that refreshed?
Well, it's ongoing because we're taking applications at all times. So whenever anyone contacts us, they're immediately added to the list. But we just analyzed it to see what all the need was. And we typically update it every couple of years, that we'll call everybody and try to get there. Yeah. So people who have been on the waiting list for 10 years, they maybe started at a 1-bedroom, now they want a 2-bedroom. We get to update that. I didn't bring any. I mean, it's like we just typically collect from what's your zip code? Where did you grow up? So it is majority. Our list is majority, brown people, then Black people, then there are some white people on our list, but I don't know the numbers.
Can you make a point? That's a great question. Should you provide that to staff to share with us?
The demographics of our wait list? Sure.
Thank you.
And we would be doing outreach as well on this project, yeah.
Give us an idea.
Mhm.
Looks like we will.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We can even include that in our proposal that we're submitting to.
Sure.
And if you wanted to look at from the course of the last, 1 to 3 years, just kind of do a year snapshot of how maybe that's changed, and maybe 1 5-year snapshot, I think it'd be on the board. Thank you.
So the next question had been about the overall proposed district itself and how this project fits within and complements that district.
I want you to take that, Harold.
I've been trying not to say I a lot. I conceived of the district and wrote up what that district would be composed of. And that is what informs this project. Like Pam was saying, the district is a container that has different outposts, different elements, living, performance, commercial retail, public art, street art, soul food, et cetera, et cetera. This project is designed to be the anchor of the Cultural Heritage District that should have been built 20 years ago, because that never happened. Ultimately, the district was designated, but all of the down stuff on the list still ain't happened. It's still not on an official city map. So this project is about the district. It's about providing an anchor that is generational, that will provide for Black art and culture organizations to be fed a sustaining revenue stream in the perpetuity because of the proceeds of the lease up of the place. So this is about the district. That's what this is about.
Yeah, so reconciling community benefit, all financial project, and what the plans are.
Okay, I'm gonna take that one. So that is the main thesis of what we presented tonight. And in your shoes, we think that is the main thing to worry about. We know Austin has struggled with this. The good news is you're not unique. This is the Federal Reserve has announced this is their stated goal, is to stop real estate development in the United States. So if we're to be successful, it will be despite their best efforts, right? So we have a lot of tricks though. We have a lot of tools in our toolkit. And after doing 44 public-private partnerships, we think over the last 2 decades, we think we bring a lot of skill sets that aren't typically used in this setting. And then pairing it with someone like a GNDC, and then pairing it with someone like a Topo, and then layering on top of that a force of nature like Harold. I think it's an interesting combination. And I think it's the beginning of something magical. Keeping the project in bounds for sound financial underwriting, but on target for who it's supposed to serve, is going to be, that's threading the needle. That's threading the needle. And this is not a cop-out answer, but Legacy answered it correctly. It is a balancing act. And you do that in collaboration with your partner. We can propose all day, but once we start negotiating tough, and we have tough decisions to make, we're going to come to terms quickly on how to make this happen. We have specific things we want to propose in the phase two that we're going to show you about how to do this. And it has to do with what we're doing here is remedial. And I want you to remember that when you see our proposal, it's remedial. This is about fixing something that should have never happened.
Amen.
That's how we avoid falling into the financial and market challenges problem.
Thank you. And look at it. I think we've got the questions. About the housing mix, was it 45 million?
Did you feel it?
No, yeah, but.
Yeah.
It's actually relevant, but I think it's a good, I think it's a good question. You feel like it was an answer, Chair? Or you...
Well, part of it was the discussion about who's on the list right now, what they were looking for.
Right.
And so I thought that had sort of covered it. But if y'all want to add more to that.
Do you want to say the unit mix of blood?
Yeah, so, units at 50% MFI with a 900-person wait list. I don't think there's a demand problem there. It's going to lease up. On block 18, if Houston Tillotson would join, and we'd be so lucky to have them, there's an affiliation agreement of sorts. And so there's it could be really loose, and we could just be included on our website. And so students would be welcome to, it'd be another place to rent on the list, right? And so why wouldn't you want to stay there among the places to stay? Be an exciting place to live. So we like that case, that lease up case and that demand case. And then on the live work units, it's going to be a very vibrant community. So, and it would be rent controlled. So as market, we're going to deed restrict or rent restrict the units forever. So as market rents grow at, 7, 8, maybe 15% through time, we're growing at 3. And so that increases demand for those units through time. So that demand case is also very strong.
And in terms of who those people are, Austin has been talking about live work spaces for artists and professional creatives for years. That's what those are. It's a component part of creating the synergy that I'm talking about. We are making a community that will outlive us and be a really cool place to live.